One of the priorities in establishing the conference was to make sure we addressed the juvenile justice system. It is part of the system that is often overlooked, but it is often one of the most important places to start in any assignment to the criminal justice beat. And I've captioned this discussion as the juvenile justice system's mental health problem, because the numbers are daunting. At least 70% of youth swept up in the nation's juvenile justice system have a diagnosable mental health concern. In New Orleans, 89% of children detained have been diagnosed with a serious mental illness. You know, we often hear from advocates, as we just heard from in our last session with Alana, defense lawyers, sometimes prosecutors. We had Jason Williams here today, law enforcement officials. But we are fortunate to have with us today the Chief Judge of the Orleans Parish Juvenile Court, Ranord Darensburg. Rarely do we get an opportunity to have a judge talk with us and describe their experiences in the system and what we can do as journalists. Judge Darensburg joined the bench in 2021 after serving as a practicing attorney social worker and has written extensively on juvenile justice reform. With that, please welcome Judge Darensburg.
Thank you for that great introduction, and welcome to New Orleans. For those of you who have who've come here from so many places, I did not know that the conference had people from so many different places. So I hope that you all are enjoying the city and enjoying our great food and all the fun we have going on here in New Orleans all the time. Hopefully, you'll get a little bit of a taste of Mardi Gras. I am a native New Orleanian. I've lived in New Orleans. I lived in New Orleans, and I had lived in a couple of different places over the course of my career. But my family is from New Orleans, and we have at least traced the name back to 1720 here in New Orleans. So we are a very, very ingrained family here in New Orleans. And I love the city, and I hope that while you're here, you'll get to experience a lot of it. So with that, I'll tell you, I know that it's late in the day, so that when I come to talk to people, I'm a little more academic, and so I'm going to read some stuff to you, but I know it's late in the day, and people are tired, and they don't want to do things. And I don't know how many people know about learning styles and different ways people learn. Anybody familiar with learning styles? So there are different learning styles. Some people learn from what they see. Some people learn from doing things. Some people learn from reading, and some people learn from hearing things. So hopefully my presentation will engage all of those things. A little bit of fun, a little bit of doing things, and those things. And most importantly, there are little quizzes in the presentation, things you might know, and those quizzes come with gifts. So in New Orleans, we like to give things away, so they come with gifts. So that means that hopefully you will be attentive as we speak. So this is also an opportunity for me. There are not many opportunities when judges get to speak to the media as we are not able to most of the time, in the topics that you guys want to talk about on topics that we can often speak about. We certainly can't speak about cases, and so I would like to share some of that with you all, and do talk about some of the mental health work we're doing here in New Orleans over the course of this time. But really, I'd really like to talk about what we think, how we interact with the media and the court system, and how we can work better with the media, not only to get more information from us, but to get information that we can get out to the public, and utilize the power that you have as the media, utilize that to have better outcomes for families as well as for the community. So with that, we're good starting. So the media coverage is crucial to the public perception and understanding of the justice system. The media's influence extends to all aspects of the justice system, including juvenile justice, where there's either the opportunity to perpetuate myths, or there's an opportunity to make new opportunities to talk about what juveniles do. As people who work in the media news, including the court system, the question for before you is how do you use the information and resources and tools to do accurate and responsible journalism? Juvenile court proceedings, though, as I said a little earlier, but I didn't say that yet, face a unique challenge in that we are a confidential court, and in our court, we are limited in the information that we can share, so that it's harder to get information from the court. But the media's portrayal of juveniles in the court is very important sometimes to the outcome of cases and how the case proceeds. There's a lot of power in that. So in today's fast-paced world, when news is disseminated at lightning speed through various media outlets, it's very important to address accountability when we do that. And the media, as I was reading, the media is the fourth estate. They're watching everything, the watchdog after the government. It is the media who's really has a lot of power to influence what goes on. So this is where the use of collaborating with the media in all courts, including juvenile court, will be very important to dealing with any challenges that come up at the court. Okay, let's see. Am I getting it right? So with that, we'll move a little quickly. And so today, hopefully at the end of the day, you have an understanding of the impact that the media has on the fairness, on the trial process in juvenile court. While the information is confidential, oftentimes people come into the court and want to talk about information that we're not able to speak about. And learning about the process or knowing the juvenile justice process will go a long way. And I hope that we can learn some of that today. Hopefully, I'll be able to share with you an appreciation for balancing the media scrutiny and its ability to protect defendants. Sometimes it's necessary in stories to tell backstories and what's really going on with youth in our community to give people an accurate appreciation of what's going on. I do want to talk to you about some root causes of juvenile delinquency and maybe give you some information that may not be readily available and some information you can use in the future to go on for your other stories. And then information about promoting a collaboration between the media for reporting and the courts. This gap between the courts and the media is a wide gap, and we tend to not really understand one another and believe that we have our interests aligned with one another's interests. But really, we can work together. So at the beginning of the presentation, I'd like to start with a bit of what we are in the media and what we think of when the media is on the line. I get a call from the administrator, and we understand that now the media is on the line, and what are we going to do? So it made me think, hopefully this will illustrate what our feeling is when we hear that you guys are calling. Judge Darensburg, the media is on the line. So let's see if it goes. So now that's what we think is coming when we hear your voice, when we hear that you are on the line. But we do know that the media is not the enemy. The media is a friend and a real resource that we can use in the courts. So we want to bring ourselves to a place where we can change that and think of the media as a partner when we talk about it, and kind of go with Rodney King and say, can we all just get along? So that brings up questions about how we're going to do that, and should judges and the court, and this is a question for us, and I hope that we'll have some interaction. Remember, I said they're gifts. I didn't tell you how you get them, but I did tell you that you'd get them. So that how do we consider them? Do we consider the media a nemesis or a resource that can be used to deliver a message? And there is where we talk about the not understanding the legal limitations of the justice system and the judges. We are really governed by judicial canons, a very, very strict list of rules that really say we can't do much of anything, can't talk to anybody, can't look at anybody, please don't do anything funny or anything that expresses you. You really have to remain very neutral and very unbiased in your work, and we certainly embrace that, but we need to get to the public as a juvenile court and let people know what's going on in the court, so that the canons say we must do our work impartially and diligently, and that really means that we can have no outside influences. So some of the times when we have the opportunity to speak to people, they will say things or do things that may cause outside influence about what we're going to do. So we really must limit our communications in cases. More importantly, it says that the judge will not comment on any pending case and make any comment in a pending case that may in any way have something to do or impact the outcome of that case. That rule extends to my staff and people that work in the court as well. No one in the court, in juvenile court, can tell you things that are going on in the court and give you information about juveniles, and that is intended to protect their dignity, to protect the juveniles from going on in life and having this stigma associated with them. So their identities are protected for that, because a lot of people don't know, and we don't get a lot of data about what comes in juvenile court. And the information I give you today will really be about the court that I serve in Orleans Parish Juvenile Court. And I believe, though, that this data sometimes holds true over the rest of jurisdictions. In our court, what people don't know is 80% of the youth that are arrested or come through our court come one time. They only come once. After they have made the mistake, like many of us do, they come to court. We have programs and opportunities for these youth to redirect their lives, and we're able to get that done 80% of the time. About 14% of youth come 2 times to court. They're arrested twice. So that leaves a very small percentage of youth that are coming multiple times, if multiple times is a good word, but who come to the court more than 3 times. So that the data is inconsistent with the public's perception of what's going on, like there are juveniles running all over the cities, marauding around, killing and shooting and committing crimes. In fact, the data is not consistent with that. And what we see in our courts is a real opportunity, because oftentimes the juvenile court is the last opportunity for youth to have a positive interaction or a positive outcome from the court. So some of that is very important for the media to know when they're talking about doing stories, and some of the stories and some of the things that we see in the media, we're told what juveniles do. Not just what we see in the media, but that happens. Sometimes it's very serious information, but a backstory is very important to that, because many times youth come into the court and the story we hear on the news is very, very different if you dig into the story. We've had situations here in New Orleans and in other cities where there's a story that says 2 youth, one youth shot the other. He shot Johnny. What they don't tell you is that they were friends and they were playing with a gun. The community gets the impression that kids are fighting and shooting each other, when really what we're dealing with in the courts are tragedies and 2 families that in fact love or like or know each other, and now have a situation that involves one youth being killed and the other facing the rest of his life incarcerated. So being aware of how we work together and what we can do to get the information to the media is significant. The second question is, with the introduction of new forms of media, did I get the right one? With the introduction of new forms of media, that's probably the third question. With the new forms of media, how does this interaction work? Look, there's so many things going on. There are fewer reporters, but more people reporting. Everybody's out there. Everybody's a reporter now, and I'll tell you, people consider us. It's okay. Oh yeah. People consider us a bit reticent to talk to people, but we get calls and information from everywhere now, and we get calls from the media about stuff that's on the internet. I cannot tell you how many people call me now and ask me about stuff that's on Instagram. One of the things judges can't do really, be on Instagram and those types of things. So I don't look at it, and I get information about things that happen. We've got to get that Judge Darensburg. He is letting kids out of jail, or we've got to get that Judge Darensburg. He's locking all the kids up. So it doesn't matter what you do. It is a situation where you could end up on the internet with a misrepresentation of what happened. So that is how that is one of the things that really should be addressed. And there's fewer news outlets that are reputable, if you will, if I can use that word, reputable. But these news outlets, include now people having their own stations on YouTube, people having their own, all those types of things. And so making that distinction is going to be important. And another question, I think I went out of order, but the media is indeed a resource for the courts. And what is the best way for judges and the court professionals to interact with the media? So we need a little bit of education from you, and we want to educate you about the courts. You know, in previous years, there were people assigned to the crime beat. As a part of that, they would have the responsibility of going into court. They would sit in the court, watch the court, have relationships with people at the court. So when they're telling stories from a perspective of having some inside knowledge about what's going on at the court, rather than just coming in and doing a quick interview about what's going on, or coming in and simply listening to proceedings in the court and then going out and writing stories. in the juvenile court, while everything is confidential, violent crimes and the commission of violent crimes are not confidential. So we get a lot of requests from the media to come into the courtroom when a youth has committed a violent crime here in New Orleans, and we really don't have a choice about letting them in, but we must be aware of what we're doing in the court and what impression is going to go out from them coming into the court. So all of that, though, all of that information can have an impact on the fairness of trials, and that's what's really at the core of this, because it gets to the individual's rights to a fair trial. Now, look, we're always balancing. I'm going to tell you about a few cases, but we're always balancing the First Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, and the 14th Amendment of the Constitution: freedom of speech, right to a fair trial, and the right to due process. So all of those things have to come together to get a good story, and all of the people in those different areas, or all of the people that are charged with those things, should work together to do those, to make that occur. So what the media does and what happens has an impact on public perception. Public perception, I mean, we know the old saying, perception is reality. And if people have the perception that they are going to be killed in their driveway every time they step out of there, they're going to be afraid. They're going to share their fear with their neighbors, and that is going to be what the impression is when they see a story that may not even involve much violence, but involves a youth in any part of the community. So the media coverage has a great impact on there. We can talk about the type of coverage often creates a skewed perception, as I stated earlier, when we say one kid shot another, without really getting into what happened there and why it happened, maybe. So by recognizing that impact and combining the efforts of the court and the media, we can work together to make a perception that's more accurate and more transparent to the community. The portrayal of juveniles in the media. The portrayal of juveniles in the media, I mean, goes back to, I guess, it goes back further than Hillary Clinton, but the telling people that there are children running all around. But what we say and the small information we give is latched onto by some people in a way that is unhealthy sometimes. Just a little bit of information that triggers something in them, some experience that they may have had, gives them the impression that lots is going on that's not. So when we start portraying juveniles in the media, we need to give a full picture of what they do. Because a full picture also of what juvenile court is, because I think people often have a different impression of what juvenile court is. Juvenile court is really supposed to be rehabilitation, not punishment. We are not there in the court to punish youth. And this is what the law says. The juvenile court is a court of rehabilitation, not punishment. The idea is to get the youth, redirect their lives. One of the rare opportunities we have in the juvenile court is that we have the opportunity to involve ourselves in every aspect of a youth's life. That means every aspect of it. That means school, that means their health, that means their family. There is a principle or a theory. There's a concept called parens peritre, or something, I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. But what it means is the court comes in as the parent. And the job in juvenile court is to provide the services and the resources that a parent can't or won't, in order to get the child onto the right track. That's the real purpose of juvenile court. When it comes to crime, what the law here in Louisiana requires that I do is place a youth in the least restrictive environment to ensure that they don't commit another crime and do what I tell them to do while they're involved in this particular case. So when we look at what the media and what people tell the community, lock them up, and we get those stories, kids should be locked up. They need to be locked up. They ought to go to jail for a long time, no matter what. Most kids don't commit violent crimes. As I said, 80% come one time, but 75% of our cases are not for non-violent crimes. The vast majority of our cases are for property crimes. Those kids are not dangerous to the community. So what we have to do together is give the community a portrayal of juveniles that says they are not they're not dangerous to the community if they steal your car, unless they hit somebody with the car and treat it like a weapon. But we have to give the perception that is consistent with what's going on in the juvenile justice system in order to give the community public confidence in the system and to give the community a sense of safety. Our goal at the juvenile court is always accountability first. We want to provide supervision of youth, but we also need to provide resources that allow that accountability to be sustainable, to allow what we do them and what we tell them and what happens after they participate in our court programs, how they can continue to do that. One of the best programs we have, and this goes to how the media's portrayal of juveniles can be enhanced, is through one of our examples. One of the best programs we have is our teen court. And I don't know, is anybody familiar with what teen court is? All right, okay. Teen Court is one of the best programs we have in the Orleans Parish Juvenile Court. This program allows youth to go into a teen environment. It's a peer-to-peer pro-social activity. They go into a peer environment where youth that are their age are the lawyers, the prosecutor, the defense attorney, they're the jury, they're the judge, they're the bailiff. They are in those roles. What these kids don't know is which kids are involved in the justice system and which kids aren't, because kids come from everywhere. One of the beauties of this beautiful things about this program is that there's such a thing as kids have to get community service hours in high school and that stuff. So we really capitalize on that and get them to come in to serve as volunteers. We have college students serving as volunteers. We have adults serving as volunteers. And it really is a tiered level of support in order to get kids working. And these are not fake cases. These are real cases that are sent to the teen court. The kid has to admit, take accountability for what they did, and go into the teen court and let their peers issue their consequences. I will tell you that many times these kids issue consequences that are far greater than me as the judge issues, so that kids are not soft on crime. So if we really want people to not be soft on crime, we ought to sort of go toward the kids and let them sometimes issue some of the consequences, and we'll then see who's going to do what at the when things get tough. Kids pull from what they know. And what the teen court does is gives kids exposure to the legal system in a way that educates them. Part of the teen court also is to teach kids about the justice system and to teach kids about knowing their rights. So they have information to pull from when circumstances happen to them and they don't know what to do. And that's the type of information, if the media shares that, it gives a balance to the perception in the public of what juveniles are like, and it also gives the community the opportunity to say, look, if we invest in those things more, there's an opportunity there. If we give students opportunities to not be in jail and do productive things, we might have an opportunity to reduce crime and make people feel safer about the communities. And also it gives the government the real information and the resources and the data to invest in juvenile court, invest in these programs, make them larger because they are successful. Now, because the media has such of an influence, there have been cases that speak to there have been cases that speak to what the media's influence and how that influence impacted the outcome of the case. This is a case in Louisiana. This is Redo versus Louisiana. In Redo versus Louisiana, this was a gentleman who robbed a bank. He robbed a bank, and after he robbed the bank, he kidnapped 3 of the tellers in the bank, and he killed one of them. So after he gets arrested, he goes to jail after being arrested, and the day after he's arrested, he gives a 20-minute interview to the authorities. And that interview is filmed. This is 1966 or 1963, I believe. That interview is filmed. After that interview is filmed, it's released to the media. So the media plays that to the local stations all over. Everyone in the parish, those of you who are not from New Orleans, I hope you learned that in the last 2 days. We have parishes here, 64 of them, not counties. So that that's what, here in New Orleans, that all in the parishes around him, they saw this video. So now he goes to trial and he says, look, everybody in the parish is seeing this video. There's no way for me to win this trial. I cannot get it. We need to change venues. The judge in that instance denied that request to change the venue. He was convicted and then appealed the decision, and the appeals court said that they should have granted him a change of venue, that information was so impactful on the case and that it did not give him his opportunity to have a fair trial and due process under the law. Again, as I spoke about the competing interests of the media and their First Amendment right to say whatever you want, and then the right of this individual to have a fair and impartial trial, and the right of this individual to be afforded his due process. So that was decision in that case. Now, the next case I want to talk about is the case of United States versus Haldeman. Now, here's where this case is. Here's where the gift is. This case involves. Is that something?
Haldeman.
That's your name? That's not that. Mr. Haldeman doesn't get Charlie. Maybe you'll know the answer, though. I hope you. That's you. This case involves a very big, well-known political activity in which there was some illegal activity, and some of the names are very important. Does anyone know what case this is? Who said it first?
Not me.
One more time. Come on, you get it. Nixon, it's Watergate. Mr. Haldeman was a part of the Watergate and was indicted as a part of the Watergate. Here, sir, come get your little gift. Was indicted as a part of the process. But during that indictment, the media made the case, talked about the case, and all of the information in the case was, you're welcome. So you see, I am giving out gifts, so it's still a chance.
You could win one of these too.
You too can win one of those. So that what happened was there were lots of articles, lots of bad articles about him, about the case, about what was going on in Watergate. So what he did was to seek a new venue and also to seek his case to be continued. This was a legal maneuver he used to do this. The court looked at his case and all the articles that went out, and certainly in those articles there was bad information about Mr. Haldeman, but also there was information that was factual. The media had given factual information, non-emotional information, no information that would stir up the passions of the community. And in that case, they ruled against him and said that people are not supposed to be ignorant of the case. And the information that goes out, as long as it is factual and as long as it's not prejudicial or so pervasive and prejudicial that it causes impacts the results of the case, then you will not. It's not wrong that you weren't allowed to change the venue. Now, this case. The case of Shepard v. Maxwell, also a very, very huge popular case in 1954. Dr. Shepard was accused of bludgeoning his wife to death, his pregnant wife. He was accused of bludgeoning his pregnant wife to death. This case turns into a big-time case of the century. But in this case, also, all the media was everywhere on this case. This is Sam Shepard and his wife as they married. After they married, she's pregnant, she's bludgeoned to death. He says he's innocent. He goes to trial, but the media is all over it. But inside of that, the media gets the opportunity to get the jurors' names. They get to interview people. And some of this, you'll see, I went and found some of the articles that talk about the case. It was the case it was in Cleveland, Ohio, and it was the case of the century for the Shepard family. And at the end of this case, there was the influence on the case. What Mr. Shepard did, he was convicted. He appealed his conviction, and the Supreme Court came back and said, and I'm going to read it to you, the opinion was concluded that it was obvious that the prejudice that spread throughout the community as a result of the intense media coverage of the case negatively affected the trial and nullified the first trial. The massive, pervasive, and prejudicial publicity attending the petitioner's prosecution prevented him from receiving a fair trial consistent with the due process clause of the 14th Amendment. He was given another trial and ultimately he was acquitted. But again, it speaks to the power of the media to impact the outcome of cases and to really get the community involved in a way that makes them not able to impanel a jury that would be fair fair and impartial to those who come before the court. So balancing those issues is the challenge that we have in the court, balancing that media scrutiny and the duty of the court to protect the defendant. Because what my job is as a judge, what I do as a judge is I am supposed to protect the rights of everyone that comes before me, protect the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the state of Louisiana. And so in that, everything that I do has to fall under those types of things. And one of those things is to be able to protect defendants from the media. One of the things we could do is change the venue of the case. We could limit the amount of information that goes out. So those are the challenges that the judge faces. I'm going to hit on myself for the media intrusion into a case. It is a responsibility. We do have a responsibility associated with this to keep these defendants safe and to protect the impartiality of the trial, because what happens at the end of it, if it is found that the trial is impartial, it's no good, and this person is acquitted or the case is dismissed or the verdict is overturned, and then you have someone who may have committed a crime back out on the streets. And Shepard v. Maxwell is one of those instances where we can see that can occur. I'm certainly not saying whether Dr. Shepard was guilty or innocent, but the impact the media had on the case was profound. Protecting confidentiality, preserving confidentiality. Well, this goes to my court and the juvenile court, where confidentiality has been a part of the court since the beginnings of the court. The beginnings of the court had to do with helping kids. The idea of the juvenile court was that kids weren't as culpable, and kids needed the help and protection of the court, of the system, rather than its hammer on their head. The first judge, Judge Julian Mack, who was the first judge of a juvenile court in Chicago in 1899, was very clear. His quote lives on, that children who come into court should feel the weight of the state, but they should also feel the solicitude of the court and the understanding that there are things that we need to do to help them out. So that preserving their confidentiality at this time helps them to get over the mistakes that they have made and get to move on to other things in life and better things. In Louisiana, there's a children's code, and that children's code tells us that everything is confidential other than traffic matters. If people need information, or if there's information that is that's needed, they can petition the court and ask a judge like me to say, I need this information for this reason or some other reason, and then the court can decide whether to release that information. But protecting the confidentiality of the juvenile and protecting the impartiality of the case is also important to other people in the case, the lawyers in the case. Cases, if the impression is that a lawyer did a bad job, it impacts their career and how they move on in their careers. If the information becomes inaccurate, it impacts the community, in that the community does not have any confidence in the system. So that what we want to promote together is really confidence in the juvenile justice system. One of the things that we can do with that is to mitigate those harms. Some of the things we can do is establish partnerships between agreements, memorandums of understanding that are not necessarily written, but understandings of what it is you do, what we can tell you, what we can't tell you, how you ask questions, what kind of information you want from the court. And that requires meeting and sitting and education. We are happy to educate anyone about how the court works and get information. It also allows us to develop relationships, like I said earlier, where there's a beat sort of reporter coming in, and so that we can offer stories to you. And when we offer the stories, there are stories that you kind of have some feeling about. I'll use teen court as another example. If we had a reporter or the media there all the time just hanging around the court, they would have some information about how that program developed, how it was initiated. They would have some information about the provenance of how teen court came to be. And so they would be interested in those stories and sell those stories or promote those stories to people who are out in the community. I forgot to give away the other gift. But the Shepard v. Maxwell case also is a very famous case and produced a very, very famous movie. The first time I hear it. The Fugitive. I saw you. I knew that you knew it. So come on, my friend in the green shirt. I was supposed to do that. So that is the, so one of the things, yeah, I was a fugitive, you guys. Sorry if I forgot to tell that part. So this is what I want to tell you about the juvenile justice system and how this system works, came to be, and exists today. Juvenile delinquency as a concept is relatively new to our country. Before the 18th century, children were only small adults, and everything they did, they were punished as adults, they were treated as adults, and really back earlier than that, there was this thing called the stubborn child law. Well, if you didn't do what your father told you, could have you killed for not doing what they told you to do. So that for a very long time in history, children were treated as adults. So when we talk about how juvenile court came to be, it's a recent concept to give children a status, some status to say it's really determined by their age and their behavior. And some of those behaviors that juveniles do, they can go to jail for that adults cannot go to jail for, such as going to school. Going to school, a juvenile that is truant may be picked up by the police and brought to jail. If you don't go to work, ladies and gentlemen, nobody's going to pick you up and take you to jail. You're not going to get paid, but nobody's going to pick you up and take you to jail for not going to work any day of the week. So that is how juvenile delinquency came about. And learning about the juvenile delinquency process and how we process kids in court is very important for the media to know, because knowing things like a kid always sees a judge. We get a lot of times people tell us that the kids are languishing in jail. They didn't see a judge. The law requires that each kid sees a judge within 48 hours of being arrested, so that we see a judge. And in our court here in New Orleans, we see youth every single day that have been arrested. So 24 hours does not go by after a child is arrested that they do not see a judge here in juvenile court. At one point, in order to get information out to the community to make the youth believe that they were going to stay in the jail longer, we floated that for violent crimes, and we considered pulling handles on doors violent crimes, youth were going to be detained until they saw a judge. Well, that's what the media said. They're holding youth who just do minor things. But in the month that after that occurred, the incidence of pulling on door handles went down by 40%. So that is really the perception. We were able to give the perception all of those kids saw a judge within 48 hours of them being arrested. But what they thought was that they were going to have to stay in jail. What then happens is we've got to clear this up. We've got to now tell the kids, oops, no, actually it's not going to be a long time. Because the media said we were holding you, we're actually not. You're going to see a judge just as you were. That then tells them, oh, never mind. We don't have to do that anymore. We'll just go out and pull the door handle. Sure enough, it went back up after that information was, after we were hauled into an interview to ask us to clear up exactly what it was. What are the violent crimes you're talking about? Why is pulling on a door a violent crime? No, we have a larger purpose in what we're doing. We need to get out into the community to make you think that sometimes they're going to be arrested. So that is some of the ways in which misaligned goals and the zealousness of the media to get it out there, to get down to the root of the problem. Well, you got to the root of it, but the root of it was that we do actually see the kids. It's just that giving them the impression that we are going to be a little more stringent gave them a little pause about what they were going to do. So how we talked, I heard Alana, the previous Ms. Odoms, who happens to be a very good friend, talk about juvenile poverty. And poverty is really is at the root of what is going on. I'm sorry, poverty is the condition of not having everything you need. And poverty doesn't just mean money. You can be impoverished in spirit. You can be impoverished in all types of things. You can be in all types of areas of your life. One of the things that I do in my court relative to addressing all of these issues is deal with the social determinants of health. Is anybody familiar with the social determinants of health? Social determinants of health is where you live, where you eat, what you do, you play, recreation, this range of things. It's things that if you have all of these pieces in your life, you're more likely to come out to have better outcomes for yourself. So what we need to do, and some of these things, many of these things, these kids don't have inside of their lives. They don't have recreation. They don't have theater, if you will. They don't have cultural activities. And I will tell you, to a child, any child that you put into a backyard, if you put your child in the summer in the backyard every day while you went to work and just said, hang out there, I don't want my house destroyed, I just hang out in this backyard and I'll see you at 5 o'clock when it's time for dinner. I guarantee you that kid's going to do something wrong. He's going to pull somebody's tree down. He's going to do something, she's going to do something wrong. Any kid is going to do that. So knowing that we have resources and things for kids to do around those social determinants of health, filling in food security. We don't know how many kids go home every Friday from school and don't eat until Monday when they get back to school or get a full meal. And we get to see that in court because the kids come into court hungry. They come into court tired. We don't know sometimes that kids who come to see us in court have the things they've done in order to get to that court. And so when they come there and we're attempting to be punitive, we don't know that maybe Johnny got his 3 siblings ready for school this morning, gave them breakfast, brought them to school, and then caught another bus to come to court so that I won't have the police come and arrest him for not coming to court. So we are not aware of those things many times. And in our court, in order to make ourselves aware, we became a trauma-informed court. And what that means is that we are very intentional about the work that we do with the kids that come into our court. We have now invested in what is called a calming room. This calming room is designed to take kids away from the justice process for a moment, to allow them to speak to someone, to express exactly what their feelings are. This began in our dependency section. Many people think that juvenile court or forget that juvenile court does a lot of work that is not around juvenile delinquency. Juvenile court does dependency cases, child in need of care cases. We do adoptions, my favorite thing, building families. As much as we have to separate them, we want to, building families is what we want to do in our court system, and we get excited about that as much as we get excited about anything else. We heard the data today about mental health. Mental health is an issue for us that here today, up to today, has not been assessed or addressed. Well, you heard the statistics, and they are accurate. About 70% of youth have a mental health challenge in the juvenile justice system. But what we did in our court was to look at our court and look at the data in our court and the kids in our court, who they are, what their circumstances were. Another thing that people often don't know about juvenile court is that here in New Orleans, we see the youth every 30 to 60 days. Now, that's from the beginning of the case, from the time that they are arrested to the very end of their case. That would include time in detention. That includes time on probation. That includes time that they may go back. That includes until the very end of the case, until they go on to whatever they're going to do to be real productive citizens in the community. We are with them. But that still is a very brief window of time. Those 4 or 5 years we have, or 2 or 3 years, are very intense, and is a very intense time to deal with issues that may be mental health issues, there may be food security issues, there may be financial issues. All those issues are things that we deal with on a monthly basis in our court and a daily basis, with people dealing with it in their lives on a daily basis. So we really are a bit of a social service agency for most of what we do. The calming rooms, as I mentioned, are rooms where kids go where we can get information about what's going on. In the dependency section, many times, youth have to testify against their parents. If the abused children have to come into court and say what happened to them. This room allows them to express their feelings in ways that are clear. We have a calming room for teenagers. Teenagers are able to go in this room and experience a little bit of downtime. And in that downtime, we have therapists in those rooms, we have counselors in those rooms to find out what their needs are. Part of what is important in juvenile justice is that we have to focus on youth that have the most need. We oftentimes try to work through a one-size-fits-all model, but we really need to focus on kids who have high need and are low risk. That's kids who are just out there with nothing to do and nowhere to go. So, and in our court, we then dealt with mental health. Our mental health issue, when I looked at the data in our mental health in our court, we discovered that 89% of our youth not have a mental health challenge, but in fact have been diagnosed with a serious mental illness. That is bipolar, that is ADHD, any one of them that you name, these kids have been diagnosed with them. 89% of the youth that are detained have this distinction. Of the youth that are in non-secure care, that means it's just a little less secure, they are not locked into rooms or cells, 100% of those youth had this distinction. This we know because every month they have now gotten into a situation where there is a psychiatrist and there are tests, there are assessments being done, and we are seeing this every month. So now we're monitoring and taking care of their mental health, learning that they are on medications that we know nothing about. What is the process of dealing with these medications? How is it affecting their bodies? What's going to happen when they leave? Are you going to give them a prescription and say, go out to Walgreens and get this prescription every month filled? How are they going to do that when they leave the court? So these are some of the challenges that we saw in our court. What we were fortunate to do is we applied to the Department of Justice last year and we received a grant in the amount of $750,000 through the Community Stabilization Grant process to create the first juvenile mental health court in New Orleans. What that court is going to do is it's not a diversion court, and it does not remove accountability from what we do. What we're going to do in that court is deal with the mental health issues that have some effect on the crimes that they may be committing in the community, and take that information to utilize to help other youth that come into the community. What is going to be unique about our program, however, is that it's going to come from a culturally competent perspective. What we know in our court, 95% of the youth that come into our court are African American. Last year, there were 831 arrests in our community. 707 of them were African American males. 124 of them were African American females. So what we want to do in our mental health court is look to culture, look to how we can bring these individuals' culture through an Afrocentric perspective, because that's who our population is. So we want to be very intentional about what we do in our mental health court and be able to let the community know that we are paying attention to the youth that come into our court and not attempting to make a one-size-fits-all model to put into practice the things that the majority of society tells us to do with youth and how they should be and what they should be, when we really ignore the cultural significance that exists with African American males and females and the cultural heritage that we have here in New Orleans and all over the United States that is being ignored in our justice system. And some of those things may be the things that we put into play, that we can put into place to help youth change their behavior, change their attitudes about themselves, instill some confidence, self-esteem, and a desire to do better and need better. So that what I do in my court, what I've learned as a part of this process, is what I need to do is get their attention. If I get their attention, then I have the opportunity to change the trajectory of their lives. Now that needs to be done in many different ways, and we need to be very intentional about how we do that. And this mental health court is intended to do that. What we're going to be able to do is provide intensive treatment that we're not able to do heretofore. In New Orleans, we don't have a probation department. We are relying upon the State of Louisiana Office of Juvenile Justice Probation Department. And this probation department, I don't know if you know, has not had the best track record, and also has been in the media a lot. Because I don't know if this came up in any of your sessions, but the Office of Juvenile Justice was putting juveniles in Angola. I see one of our reporters here. Putting juveniles in Angola. And so that went out to the media, all the way to the United States, right down to having Ms. Ryan from the Department of Juvenile Justice write a letter saying, we will give you help, whatever you need to do. We know that incarcerating youth is not the answer. We cannot incarcerate ourselves out of any type of crime, most certainly not in youth crime. And what we need to be very, very aware of is that they are coming back. All of these youth have to come back into the community. What we need to do is work together with the media to create a situation where they come back into the community as productive citizens rather than as crimes and marauders. So with that, promoting a collaboration is what we want to back to the program. Promote the collaboration is what we want to do. And truth is our best guidance. Utilizing data, the data that tells us what we're doing, some of the data that I shared with you today, to buttress the information that we share, to show that that there is no bias in the media. It really gives you credibility, gives credibility to the court when we come out and say it. But when there is a perception in community and in the media that there's a bad situation. It's very difficult for people to see that data. I cannot tell you how many times I say to people who get up and say, this happened to me just a few days ago, who would say, juvenile crime is so bad, and those kids, there's a revolving door at the juvenile court. First and foremost, that door has to revolve because everybody can't stay on this side of the door. That door has to go around at some point and let some of these people out. Secondly, didn't I just tell you that 80% of the kids come one time? No response at all, almost as though I had not said that in the conversation. Still no response. I can't tell you how many times I said that to the media, and they have not responded, not at all. We want to focus on the 3% of youth that come over and over and over again. Certainly that is something that we have to deal with, and we deal with as best we can. Even the data that says kids that come to my court in the Orleans Parish Juvenile Court, the more they come, the longer they stay in jail. So that our work is really around making kids better and giving this community kids that are better. Our challenge is that what we end up doing in our system is putting kids into the same environment that they were in before they came to see us. And we have not worked to change anything about them or their environment. What our mental health court is going to do is attempt to do that. And what our data tells us is that that is what works, so that it's valuable to have data that gives all of us the opportunity to work together and better. The role of mere shedding light, well, we have systemic issues in our court system as well. The juvenile court system, I know I'm making it sound like we have the best juvenile court system in the world, and I believe we do. But I will also tell you there are problems in the system as well. And when we highlight systemic issues in our system, and when the media is able to do that and get accurate information from us, that makes the system better. We certainly believe that. And working together to find out root causes is really of what's going on in the system. That really helps the court. It helps the community. It makes people feel safer. It makes people have more confidence in the justice system. Because the justice system, if people don't have confidence in the justice system, we are really going to deteriorate our democracy, because the justice system is where everyone is going to get their rights. You've got to go to court to get your rights, and if you don't believe that when you get to court, you're going to get a fair and impartial trial and get your really meaning having your constitutional rights accepted and realized, then you are not going to participate in the government or in the system at all. So it is important for us as media, as the courts, to work together to create that system for all of us. And so we want to make sure that we engage with the court. We are certainly open to any opportunity that we have to talk about the court system. We're open to coming to things. This, as I say, is an opportunity for us at Orleans Parish Juvenile Court to speak to the media in a way that we often don't get to do. You said judges have a hard time getting to judges, and we understand that, but it's not a hard time getting to us here in New Orleans. So, and that's all that is to say. All I say is to say, media and the courts must appreciate and honor the profound impact they have on the public perception. Education is the key. Educating each other, educating the community is what is going to be crucial to that. Juvenile delinquency is complex, and responsible reporting requires inclusion of all relevant information. We talked about that. Hopefully, I helped you know that most information that you can give, balancing a story, giving the accurate or at least a full-bodied impression of juveniles that are in the system will go a long way to helping fair trials and a long way to helping the community decide that juveniles are not bad people that we have in the community, and somehow these bad people are born, and we have to get rid of them before they get to be bad adults. So I think that we have a long way to go with that. And the courts and me work together to provide the community with accurate stories. We are happy always to provide aggregate data. While I say it's confidential, we're certainly able to provide the type of data I gave to you today. The data about the kids that come to our court, how many of them are there, how many times they come to our court, and the good work that we do as well. And know that data-driven practices are the ones that gives the confidence to the community and in what they are doing. And the data is what tells us why. Now, as I finish I have no idea where I am on time, but...
Yeah, we need to get to questions.
Okay, very good. As I bring us to questions, I'd like to leave a life lesson that pertains to us as well as to the media in life, but what the message is, if you know why you're doing something, it makes what you do more impactful. So that I know that what I do is I protect the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of Louisiana and the rights of people that come before me. Why I do it is because I like our democracy, I like the country, I like where I live, and I want to do what I can to make children and families stronger and communities safer. So that's why I do it. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope that we were able to learn something today. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know how much time, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, we're going to do a quick round here, Judge.
I just recently listened to a podcast on the children of Rutherford County, and it was about kids in Rutherford County, Tennessee. And there was a state statute that said kids who are taken into custody for nonviolent crimes could not be held. But a judge had written her own rules, and for a decade or more, she was locking up kids for everything. Is there anything in Louisiana's statutes, or is there a protection built in for kids to keep them from being locked up?
I will tell you that there is not anything that says you can't lock up kids for nonviolent crimes. However, there is a statute that says what I must do, I shall place youth in the least restrictive environment possible to keep them from committing another crime and do what it is I tell them to do in order to stay out of trouble until we can resolve the situation that we're dealing with. Oftentimes, and I certainly don't know the situation with that judge and what her perception was, but oftentimes the community doesn't like that, you know. They believe, we have an underlying belief somehow that if we punish children, and it's the way that we do with our children at home, we punish them and think that that's the answer. Go sit in the room, be quiet, sit over there for an hour in a room by yourself, and that we believe that that solves the problem. So that the community believes that that is what is going to be the answer. So no, we don't have a statute that protects in the way that definitively, but we do have one that says that we have to put children in least restrictive environment, and I try to do that as much as I can.
Thank you.
Okay, I promise it's not an SAT question.
Okay.
My name is Shannon Sims. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Okay.
And I was curious if you use adverse childhood experiences and trauma screening here in Louisiana, and how that screening helps in your decision making. And when you're talking to colleagues across the country, are you seeing this to be a common practice in more juvenile courts? And because I know you're running, I have the second part of my question also is to know, you talk about the protection of youth, and I understand that very much so, but then you also talk about the data and the positive things that you're doing in the Juvenile Justice Center to try to correct some of the root causes before the children go back into the community. So my second question is, how do then we as media, as reporters, get in the inside to see those stories, to be able to report those stories beyond just data, because especially as a media journalist as myself, I'm visual. So we want to see and also hear how that impact is happening in your court. So first about the ACEs, and then second about how do we get into the courts to report on some of those positive things you're doing to address the needs of children.
Very good. Thank you for that question, those questions. The ACEs is something I'm very familiar with. One of the things about me as a judge, I'm also a social worker, so that I'm familiar with some of the social work terms and take that information to the court. ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, is something that, along with that, and also brain development and how the brain is not developed to make good decisions but we do look at, in becoming a trauma-informed court, one of the pieces of becoming that was to become very informed about the adverse childhood experiences. And the more of them, the way that works is the more of them you have, the more, not definitely bad things are going to happen to you, but the more adverse childhood experiences. That means divorce, witnessing violence, hunger, anything that impacted your life, a trauma in your life. For example, one of the ones that we pay very close attention to and have paid very close attention to for the last few years is Katrina. The separation from New Orleans was an adverse childhood experience for anyone that was today. If you're 18 years old today, and your mother lived in New Orleans and she was pregnant during Hurricane Katrina, you were born somewhere else. You were moved to another location. We have kids that come into our court that don't even believe New Orleans is their home. They were then moved from Oklahoma, from Texas, back to New Orleans. So that then ends up being one of the adverse childhood experiences. So in order to, those things can be combated. And so what we try to do is go back and mitigate some of those things as they come into court. One of the things we can find out what they are, and what we try to do in our court is to then place in place the social determinants of health I mentioned earlier. Finding out, putting in place where they eat, where they go, to remove some of those traumas that existed. How now? Second question, I hope I answered that. Second question, how do you get into the court to get that information? You know, one of the things, we can't really talk about it, just as we can't talk about the bad stuff, we can't talk about specifically the good stuff. But there is no prohibition to come in. The courthouse is an open building, but by that I mean the kids and the families that come into the court are free to tell their own stories. It's not confidential for them to tell it, and getting to them in our court is easy. We have in our court something called parent navigators. We work with an organization who you're going to talk to tomorrow, Mr. Ernest Johnson, Ubuntu Village, and they have parents that come into our court to give other parents some information about the workings of the court and how things happen. And so those parents, that type of organization that can talk about success stories, yes, we love success stories. And those kids who have success stories want to tell their story, sometimes believe they can't tell their story, or don't have an opportunity or an outlet to tell their story, but going directly to the kids is a way to get that information. We can talk about it in the aggregate. We can talk about, yes, we have success stories, and we only have we have two programs that are very gender specific. We have the girls program called Grow and a boys program called Mellow. Those programs are designed around data that tells us what girls respond to, what boys respond to. Not any boy and girl, not any boy and girl everywhere, just the ones that we have in our court. And that program has only like a 2% recidivism rate, a 5% recidivism rate. We can say that, but we can't tell you that Johnny came in here, learned how to, started reading books, and next thing you know, he is like head of the library and never came back here again. Those types of stories we aren't able to tell, but Johnny can tell that story. Johnny's mother can tell that story as well. So going directly to the source, I guess, if that's a way to put it in media terms.
Judge, I think we're going to have to drop it there, but I want to thank you first for your passion, your energy, and bringing your knowledge, and most of all, being willing to come as a judge and providing us with, I think, some very helpful information and data. But thanks so much.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.